What's up, everybody? I'm going to do a disassembly and reassembly of this Remington 550-1. I already partially took it apart, and I realized I'll just take a video of me doing this because I understand it well. I tried to put it back together, but due to the nature of the malfunction I had, I can't. So basically, for the parts I did, all I have is the spring out, the charging handle, and this screw. So basically, this screw will be sitting in here. We'll take the stock off first. Take the stock off with this screw. And as soon as you undo it, it'll just come out. And then what I did was I unscrewed this. This screw right here is, I took that out. And then what I did was I took the spring out, unscrewed it from the back here, and then you could pull the charging handle out once you retreat it back to this divot. Generally, when the spring's in there, it won't let you pull it back all the way out. When you do have the spring out, you could pull the bolt back a little bit, and you'll be able to pull this out, and then the bolt will come right out. Alright, so what happened was I fired a round, I think was too high pressure, and it lodged itself in the floating chamber. I tried to take a tool and push it out. Ended up just poking through the casing in there. So I have to take it completely out. Alright, so now that you've got the bolt out, this out, the spring and all that, let's take this out. This part right here. There we go. So there's a spring in here. So there's going to be a spring inside of your receiver once you end up removing this. So just know to look for that. Just have to work it out. There you go. There's the spring. There's this. This sits right in there. And that click you heard was the sear. Just sort of doing whatever. Alright, now that we have that out, it sort of just floats around in there. I'm going to take it out by knocking out this pin. Alright, so I got the pin out enough of the way. I'm going to take this out. The sear has dropped in there, so I can get some tweezers, pull that out. So just gotta get it at the right angle and it'll come right out. Okay, so this pin will take out these two components. Make sure you clean it because you have it out. Alright, so this is going to allow me to push this back, and doing that will, I think will allow me to take out the chamber, floating chamber. It's kind of jammed. Just gonna push this through. There we go. I think with that out, I can get this out. Yep. Okay, this is the problem. So yes, it was definitely too much pressure. This is from me poking it, trying to poke it out, push it out, and it just ended up poking through. That's not from firing it. You see, it's kind of ringed. It's like lifted. I gotta figure out a way to get that out, but that is not supposed to happen. So I will not be shooting this ammo. I will show you the ammo that did this. Definitely too high pressure. It didn't say how many FPS on the box, so I kind of took a risk. Will not be shooting that anymore. Good to know. Okay, so now I'm going to punch out these two right here. This is going to remove the trigger. If you saw that, the safety now comes free because the spring this thing right here that goes in your trigger. Right here. Goes in this divot right here. Lines up with the safety. And now that that's gone, it'll just swing free. Okay. Alright, and then let's just get this out all the way. Okay, so that's the first pin, the bigger one. There's two. Now I'm going to get the smaller pin out. This one came out easily. Okay, cool. So you got two pins. You'll notice that on one side of the pin, it's rounded. It's rounded there. That's the side that goes in first. Opposed to this side, which is flat and doesn't allow it to go in smoothly. Just a little tip. Okay, so you have two pins. This pin is the same size as the one on the sear, but I like to keep them separate. Anyway, so now your trigger will come right out. It's got this. Make sure you oil that. Everything's going smoothly. Now this thing right here holds the tube in place. I'll take that out. It's a small flathead in there. Alright, so that'll allow you to take your mag tube out. But be careful when you do that. You don't skew it in any way because this is welded on, this ring. And if you pull it out too quickly and turn it, it'll snap off. So just be careful when you take this out. Just pull it straight out. That's it. No tension or anything. And obviously you have this. I'm not going to disassemble this part, but yeah. I'm going to take out the safety. There we go. So you got the safety screw, safety lever, and here is this internal part that catches on the trigger's spring and detent right here. This pin right here that goes into the trigger will sit in there. Turn your safety on and off. Now that you have everything out, except for this block, you can push it out. So that's what we'll do. This thing has a little bit of resistance. It's not abnormal for that. Every time I've taken this thing out, it's really dirty and it just takes a little bit of pressure to do it. Definitely a component that you should clean a lot because it gets really filthy. Here it is. As you can see, my hands are all dirty just touching it. So yeah, that's how you take. So you take everything out of the receiver. If you want, you could take a wrench and you can unscrew the barrel from this. It'll come out. Then you'll just have the receiver in the barrel. If you're going to re-blue it or something, it's a good way to do it. You could take off the sights here, obviously unscrewing that. The front sight, I don't know how, if you can take it off, but I'm not sure. Yeah, so that's this. So give it a good clean, and I'll get to the reassembly in a second. All right, something I want to go over real quick because it's kind of tricky to do. So what this needs to do is, you'll see there's a notch right there. See where the string would go, right in there. So a lot of people, when they have this thing in there, they're trying to screw it in because pretend the spring is in there. It's going to sit in this, and you've got to screw it in. What they get wrong is they try and screw it in, and it's up top here. It needs to be notched inside here. So you have to find a way to raise the sear so it fits in that sweet spot, and I'll show how to do that. But really make sure that you're not screwing it on top because you'll strip the threads and it'll just not go together well. so I will show how to put it back together when we get to that point. As for my issue, which some other people might have, just first and foremost, do not shoot things that are too high pressure for this. This gun is really old. Don't use ammunition that wasn't around, or the pressures that weren't around during that time. This didn't have the fucking thing on the box, so I just took a risk and it bit me in the ass. So I just pinched it down with some pliers to avoid, you know, putting this thing in a vise and putting a saw near it. So I just pinched it down. I should be able to just work this thing out. There we go. All right, so this thing is free. All right, so now we're gonna start with the reassembly. If you took the barrel off, that's gonna go on first, and so following that, we're gonna put this in. Make sure this notch is facing this way. Like I said, there's a little bit of force. This hole is going to line up with this hole. Cool. So now that we got that in there, we're not going to do anything with it yet, but we are going to just leave it in there for now. Now we're going to do the safety. So you want these indents to face down, and you'll see these two notches in there. This will line right up, just like that. I don't believe it'll fit the wrong way. It shouldn't, but so it should only fit like that. And the easiest way to get this thing in there, in my opinion, is to put it lined up with the hole, and then put the screw through. As you'll notice, the threads are only at the top of the screw, so you will need to, so it'll just go in smoothly with that, and then just sort of push it in there, and the screw will line up in this hole. Nice. And now you can take your safety and sort of push it through that hole, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Just like that. You can see it's kind of protruding through that right there. So now what we'll do is put this. Okay, so now it doesn't fit like that. So right, that's the correct way. Now we will take the screw and just sort of get it to go where it needs to and screw it in. This thing is kind of a pain. I've taken this gun apart a lot and it still hasn't proved any less tedious each time I do it, so it's just the safety and the sear of this gun that are really a problem. All right, you'll know it's all good when this thing moves in one uniform move. See those notches right there? They're facing where this pin would seat, right in there with the trigger. All right, so we are going to install the sear now. These two parts. The way I like to do it is I like to have a Dremel part as the temporary pin to hold things in there. It's just big enough to sort of just fit right in there without a whole lot of force. So the first thing we're going to put in is this. We're going to put this part in. This one's a little bit tricky. I'll show you why. But so the way it's going to work is this circular thing is going to be against this wall. This circular thing here is going to be against that wall. Sit like that. I don't know if I had it oriented correctly. It's going to sit like that. Cool. So let's take this. Let's get this in there. This is a little finicky, so if it takes you some time, it is okay. Okay, so we got that in as far as it should be. Now I'm going to put the sear in there. I'm going to orient it as it should be, and then just sort of slide it back underneath where it needs to go. Align it. There we go. So now the sear is in place. So now you'll see your sear will move in there just like that. Cool. So now I'm going to set the pin in there. Set. Okay, so this is flush. So now you have your sear in there. You should see it moving around in there. Okay, now we are going to put this in. We're going to do the hard part. Okay? So this and this, just as I described earlier, you want this little notch between here and here. You want that to catch that little lip on the sear. It needs to be notched inside here. So you have to find a way to raise the sear so it fits in that sweet spot. What you're gonna do, which I found is very helpful, is take a screwdriver. Let me get a different one. Here we go. So we got this. What we're gonna do is get underneath the sear there. See me raising it up and down, right? So that will allow us to control, as you can see, it's moving up and down. That'll allow us to control how high and low it is. So that sweet spot where it'll fit in that notch is rather high up, and this is a visualization of it without the spring, but you're gonna need to do this with the spring. So this is what it will look like. See the sear in there, raised in that notch in this screw. And now I am going to do it with the spring in there. I did that without. It's good to practice without the spring first, just so you understand, because this is the hardest part. Okay, so I'm gonna take it out, and you'll notice when I take this thing out, the sear will fall to the bottom. There, okay. So now get your screwdriver, or whatever you're using. Get it in that sweet spot. And now we're gonna do it with the spring. So the amount of tension you should expect from this is, it's a little bit more than at least my fingers. I have oil on them too from cleaning it. So I definitely use a little bit of screw force, but there should not be very much resistance on this part when you're screwing it in. It's just annoying. So you see I have it in the correct spot. Now that sear is floating in there and there's a little bit of spring tension. Just be careful you do not strip it. If you strip it, nothing good comes from that. So see how easily this is going in? There's no resistance. Now this is in. There you go. Let's put the floating chamber in. So the way to put the floating chamber in, lift this up, push it back, and you should be able to simply take your floating chamber, line it up with this notch here for the ejector, and you can put it in. As a tip, if you ever need to clean the floating chamber, because this is a part that needs to get cleaned, that's all you need to do is undo this screw and raise this up push this back and it'll give you enough room to take this out. I couldn't take it out earlier because I had that round stuck in it, or that casing. So I had to take the whole thing apart, so I thought I'd do a video. So now you just take it in and make sure that little ramp there, that's your feed ramp, so make sure you polish it. Make sure it's clean. Just give it an extra wipe for good luck. So you're going to take your floating chamber, put it in. Doesn't want to move. There. So now you should be able to pull this thing back as far as it needs to. And you'll know it is fully seated if you can pull the mag tube even a little bit further than it lines up here. If it's not really reaching, it means the feed ramp is getting caught on that little metal piece. So perfect. Just takes a little bit of messing around. Now we're gonna do the trigger. All right, the trigger is this. Obviously, it's the fucking trigger, so not hard to identify. What we're gonna do is we're gonna utilize this little window here. You can see the sear right there. You'll know it's in correct position if you could see the sear through there. All right. So take our trigger, and like I said earlier, this little notch is going to not line up with that notch. So get it in just like that. That's how it'll sit. Just like that. You can see it interacting with the sear. We're going to put it in there. This is partially, the spring partially controls how smooth your trigger pull is. Just make sure that's all good. There's multiple parts that deal with that, so make sure this component is got oil too. Cool. So I am going to have it on off safety when I do this, because you'll get the most room. Okay. You see it interacting with the sear through that window. Now I'm not going to do so many visuals. I'm just going to line it up with that sear and push the pin through. Flush, a little bit raised here. Nice, they're both flush. Now you can see, you'll see how it's not quite aligned yet. That's fine. We still have this pin, so take your other pin, through. You'll see now that we have that pin through, it holds it. Tap it in, flush, flush, pins are flush. Okay, so now, let's see, so this screw, then we're going to do this, it's going to go in here. Okay, let's see. Let's make sure it's snug. It's normal if there's a little bit of a raise there, that's not a problem. So now this thing will be fixed in place, it's not wobbling anymore. check safety, not moving, moving. Cool. So now we're going to do the bolt. So you're going to take your firing pin, put it in. See, it notches in there perfectly. It only going one way. So now you're going to take this. Make sure you have it off safety. Take it, put it through so you get resistance. Pull the trigger. Should go through more. Perfect. Just line up this hole just like that. It'll fit well in there. Sometimes it takes a little bit more jimmying to get it well and set. Now this indent is going to face up, and there you go. So now it should close. Throw a little bit of oil on that. .22s are dirty, so just make sure you put a bunch of solvent when you got everything out. Clean all the parts. Oil that bitch up. All right, now we're gonna just put our spring in. Put this in there if you had the screw. I don't have the screw, unfortunately. So now we'll just put this in there. Just make sure you line it up. You'll see it notches in a specific spot in there. You just have to look. Now just screw it in. Nice. Cool. So now everything works. Looks like it's doing well. We're just gonna put the stock on, which you did not see in the beginning because I had already taken it off before I decided to make a video. So it's gonna fit. I'll just sort of notch itself in there. There you go. You'll know it's in the right spot when it just fits snug. Now there's threads on the stock, and then there's the threads on the rest of it. So make sure you get both of them and give this a good tighten, because if it's not tightened well, it'll come loose and your stock will be wobbling. If you don't have a screwdriver on hand, it is just annoying. So give it a hearty tighten. Obviously don't go overboard. You don't want to fuck anything up. So that is it now. I'm gonna get back. I'm gonna come back with some dummy rounds and see if it cycles. 1 second. Okay. We got our dummies here. I'm going to drop them in. And these are dummies. It says it on there, so the gun safety people don't eat me alive. Okay, so now we'll chamber it. Cool. Cool. We had a jam. That happens with these. It's not the dummies. I've seen this happen a lot. I don't think it's the gun, but just so we know, if you undo the mag tube and release the spring tension on it, it makes clearing a jam a million times easier. And then you just put your spring tension back. And cool. Yep, that's it. And let's test this. Yes, I dry fired it. It'll be fine. Yeah. And this is your Remington 550-1. Fully assembled. Enjoy it. Have fun with it. Take care of it. This is the bench. Looking fucking healthy. Stuff everywhere. Got this thing stuck to the back. This is the phone stand I used. I just drilled this thing in there. Got a magnet on the back of my phone. That's why it looked like that in the beginning of the video, and then looked like that, or top down. I fixed it. Yeah. Cool. Have fun.